want to. You don't gotta do it if you don't want to. You don't gotta do it if you don't want to. It's just a suggestion.
Hey, so welcome back to the Conversation Podcast. I'm letter K. That's Psych right there. And so today we've done like this huge arc about relationships, like this big epic. And now we're going to tie it up, I think, with a couple episodes on family.
I think that's appropriate. I think why not?
Why not?
Wrap it up.
Yeah, see if we can't get our estranged loved ones to no longer want to communicate with us. Perfect opportunity for that. But speaking of, and you're gonna have to be honest with me, but last episode, I kind of got the feeling like we were really gonna finish that bottle.
We
were going to finish that bottle. So
we did.
My question is it because you really wanted to bring this one out?
In part, yes. I didn't know it was going to be this one per se. I had thoughts about which direction to take it. In fact, I talked with my wife about the different avenues we could take the drinking options that were related to our theme. And this is a complete departure of what we had talked about, but one that I think is appropriate. This is a bottle of Glenfarclas. They are the oldest family-owned distillery in Scotland, going on, 5 or 6 generations now, depending on what internet resource and search engine or AI you're using. They've been established, they've been in business pretty much since the early 1800s. This bottle, it says established in 1836. However, there is evidence of them being in existence prior to that, or late 1700s.
So this is when the company was founded, not when great daddy Glenfarclas was making moonshine.
Yeah, so it's in the Grant family now, and they came about, I think it was just a few years after they got started. If I could just double check this right here. Yeah, their family is almost 160 years they've been doing this. 160 years. Okay, so 1865 was when the Grant family got into this. So I'm curious to see this bottle. I chose them because of our topic, family. This is a family-run business, 5-6 generations, like I said. It is strong. This is cask strength, and families are meant to be strong, right?
Yes, you have to have a strong foundation of hard liquor to engage with your family.
Sometimes strong liquor helps you endure and tolerate those moments. We'll have some holidays coming up upon us pretty soon. So yeah, let's.
Yeah, in fact, by the time this episode airs, we're probably looking at right before Thanksgiving. So perfect timing. Totally planned it. So yes, welcome back to the Conversation Podcast, where we come up with meaningful excuses for day drinking and talking amongst yourselves. And Psych's going to pour that. I am going to
60%. This is 60%.
What was the last bottle?
I think it was in the 50s, maybe high 50s.
Yeah, high 50s, yeah.
Yeah, it's just right over there.
So to continue this trend, I'm going to Reno. Maybe I'll bring back a bottle of Everclear. Because I mean, how much higher can we get?
Rocket fuel.
Oh, yeah. So family. Yes, family. I mean, we have them, and if you're fortunate enough to have them in your life, I think that's great. If you are unfortunate enough to have them in your life, I think that's great too, whether you believe so or not. Oh, here we go. We're giving it an actual taste test. All right.
Cheers.
Oh my gosh, that is peat. peat fired. Like, ooh.
I love a good scotch. I do
Yeah.
love the peat. I
Yes.
err on the peat side.
And I'm not a big fan of scotch in general. This is, I mean, I can drink it. This is okay.
A little
but-
ice.
A little ice. But wow, that is, man, I feel like I just had a cigar.
You taste the earth.
Yeah.
You taste like the ground, the land, the soil.
So speaking of drinking and family, not that I need to, but to kind of kick this off anecdotally, because
All right.
ChatGPT suggested that I keep this episode light so that my mom doesn't get mad.
Sure. You don't want your mom mad at you.
So Christmas with my family. My family is not super big. Most of my dad's side lives up in Oregon, so we don't like see them for the holidays. And my mom's side is equally as small. And like her brother, we'll get with that side of the family around Thanksgiving, but not Christmas. Christmas is mostly for the kids and for my wife, because my father, who loves buying gifts, really loves buying gifts for my wife. And it's because when she grew up without Christmas, she's a member of she grew up as a member of a religious denomination that didn't support Christmas.
Oh, okay. I have some people in my family that.
Yeah, and that's perfectly
that.
fine. However, when my father found out, that we were getting serious, and they liked her, and and all this stuff, when they found out that she had never had Christmas, my dad just lost his mind. So she needed 24 years worth of Christmases to catch up.
All right.
All at once. So that when you came over to my parents' house on Christmas morning, you had to push packages out of the way with the door to get into the front room of my parents' house. And I'm not exaggerating. The tree is on the far side of the room of, like the sitting room. My parents have a sitting room with a fireplace and such.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about,
what do they call that? The family room, right?
so we had a family room as well. And I'm not really sure what the distinction is. Do we have two family rooms?
I think the living room is where the television is, the couches are.
Okay.
And then if you have
Family
a place where you serve tea and coffee, and you might have a fireplace, and you have some chairs, and you sit and you gather, and
Family
you
room.
share conversation. I'd always been taught that was the family room.
And it's funny because we never were allowed to sit in that room as a kid because my dad was an antique collector, and he was like, get off the antiques.
It's for company.
Yeah, I guess, for the old people. But anyway, tree is 30 feet from the door, 25 feet from the door. And you had to push the presents out of the way to get in.
It's an obstacle course.
It was an obstacle course. And I had one gift because I'm an adult. I don't need presents from my parents. And my brother had one gift. We probably both got the same socks or some shit. And Amethyst was like a marathon. Like we were sitting there watching her open presents until like lunchtime.
Is it still carrying on to this day?
It's not as
Okay, so she has been caught up.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not as overwhelming as it once was, but yeah, my father loves gifts.
Do you have any footage of that?
No,
Shot and
this is,
recorded?
this is 2002.
Okay.
So I'm sure there's pictures, but it's before, the iPhone made taking photos very simple. Like I had an LG flip phone back then. So any photos that I would have had would be just like, 230p and grainy and garbage.
All right.
But no video, unfortunately. It was before we started the video cookbook. So didn't have a camera back then. But that's not the story. The story is that my father, not really a heavy drinker, not really a drinker at all, honestly. But around the holidays, he liked to snoot, and he likes Southern Comfort and 7-Up.
Together.
Yeah, and SoCo and 7.
Okay.
It's totally a thing. It's totally a thing.
I don't think I've ever had that before. I have had SoCo, and for some reason, it doesn't like me, or I didn't like it, or both, and yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. But it's like a 7 and 7, which is Seagram 7, which is like a Canadian whiskey.
Okay. I don't think I've had that either.
But it's like a sweeter version of a whiskey and 7-Up, basically. Anyway, he like to have this, has this like copper mug.
I love those.
Yeah, keeps things cold.
Yes.
And he brings it down for his SoCo and 7s.
Yes.
And me and my brother would show up. We did it for years. We would show up and see how, because we just start drinking once we showed up. See how quickly we could get Dad, festive. And my mom would just get so mad. She'd be like, Eric, Michael, are you making another drink for your father? That kind of stuff. So good. So good. But all in fun because it was my dad's very stoic, and so it was really fun to see him like just break out and just having a great time. And Christmas is that time for him. He just loves the gifts and he loves the joviality. And I think he just, that's his time to shine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
Right. He's got the traditional mug or glass or, the chalice that is for the event. It sounds like he doesn't do that all the time. And so it's just, when Christmas comes about.
I don't have enough stories of my parents when they were younger, but the few that I have heard, I think that my dad was like me, at the same age, like pretty into partying, right?
All right.
So I think he just calmed down when he had kids.
Sure.
And since I didn't have kids, cats don't tell you to calm down.
But cats don't make you drinks either.
No, cats do not make you drinks. That would be kind of sick. Maybe a little dangerous.
Maybe AI can take care of that.
Yeah, maybe. Because, if my cats made drinks, they'd probably also find a way to leverage drink making into snacks.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got their feeding automated, right? You can get on your phone and do that. What if they had the same opportunity to do that for your cocktails?
Like do we have like one of those pre-mixed drink things that just dispenses a mixed cocktail?
And they go over and paw
smack the button.
Yeah. I'll get some catnip and some treats and some extra petting if I make Dad a cocktail.
If nothing else, we have come up with some brilliant niche market ideas on this podcast.
Yes.
That's absolute genius, especially if it's all yes or snacks or something,
That could be a nice social experiment. People with pets, are they adaptive enough and in tune enough with their caretakers and their own family to realize, hey, they're a little bit happier when they have this. Let me just give them one of these.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that cats know who they can get snacks from the most frequent. When we're eating, the cats hover around my wife, but they know that they get too close to me, they get a headlock, a noogie, and they get thrown away.
Okay.
But so yes, they're not dumb,
Yeah.
but they're not smart. But they definitely know how to leverage their survival instincts as a house cat.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just my cat family. So what about you?
What about me?
Yeah. So tell me, just in way of making conversation.
What do you want to know?
Just tell me. Just give me like an anecdote about. We talked about my Christmas. Did you have family traditions growing up that were equally as anecdotal?
Sure, certainly. So I'm the oldest of 5, and it was a large family, 7 of us, right?
Yeah.
Mom, dad, 5 kids. I am almost 10 years older than my youngest sister.
Okay.
So it was 3 boys right away, and then my parents took a break, and my mother always wanted a daughter, and they went back at it again, and they got 2 in a row.
There you go.
So that's
fire them off.
Yeah, that's how that happened. We were pretty much raised going to church, so everything Christian, including Christmas, was a part of our family traditions. Christmas was big. Family was big. My father's side of the family had a huge family. I think we would go over to my father's family for Thanksgiving, sometimes Christmas Eve, and usually we spent Christmas, if not at home, with my mother's family, so my grandparents on that side. my father was one of 6 children, and all of them except for one aunt had just
populated,
kids, just kept going. So I had so many cousins. It was a big family, but a small house. My grandmother's house in Oakland was small, and but somehow it fit us all in there, and it fit all of the food that she would make. Southern cooking. My father, I think, was born in Georgia, if I remember correctly. He's on the East Coast for a while. His father was in the Air Force, and so they moved around a little bit. But they had all of the Southern cooking. They had the fried chicken and the collard greens and the cornbread and the biscuits and the mac and cheese, and it just, you were not eating healthy.
Yeah, what you eating?
But it tasted phenomenal. It was just so good. Imagine your stereotypical big mama's house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And grandma feeds the family.
Mm.
And it was a lovely time. All the holidays, we tried to get together. And then, of course, grandparents don't live forever.
Mm.
And sometimes if they are the glue that holds the family together, if that's the hub, if that's the house, if that's the home where everybody comes to congregate during these times, when they're no longer there, if somebody doesn't step up to then reunite the family, then it can easily just kind of fall apart.
Yeah, I totally get that. I grew up, when I was young, all of the traditional stuff was at my great grandmother's house.
Mm.
And she passed when I was 11, 1990. And that was the only time where there was large groups. Like, there's not a whole lot of kids in my generation, like immediate, family. My uncle on my dad's side has 3 kids. There's me and my brother, and then my uncle on my mom's side had 1 child, and then I had a step cousin or half cousin, step cousin. Yes. But at Grandma Great's house, that's when it was like the bigger family was the generation before me, my father's generation, my mother's generation. They had all the cousins, and the cousins had kids. And that was the big thing, was, this tiny little house in South Stockton. And it was, there were so many people that, she put blankets over the washer and dryer, and all the pies and breads and foods and such.
Oh, wow.
I still do that. I do that to this day. And that's how we always did it. Had to have fold out table in the garage, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And, but yes, once she passed, I don't think I ever saw any of those people ever again. So yeah, the glue, I could see where somebody, the grandmother, the matronly figure, bringing people together. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So like like I said, my family was very small. I mean, I grew up with the 1 cousin basically, and we were real tight. So with a larger family, do you feel like there's you're getting drowned out kind of, like, or is there like a comfort in having such a big group that you call family?
No, I don't think I've ever thought I'm getting drowned out, like I wasn't getting enough attention. So I was the oldest. So presumably, or in most cases, the oldest is really the child that the parents have never had children before. They
make all the mistakes.
They go the extra mile to keep them alive. Yes, they probably make a lot of mistakes as well. And then they learn all the things that they did that didn't really matter, or all the precautions that they took that they didn't necessarily need to. And so the other children come, and it's like, oh, okay, go play in dirt. Oh, okay, yeah, you can eat those weeds. And, it's like, they'll survive because the last one did, and he's just fine.
I worked with a guy for years, and he had kids, and he was always fond of saying, that first kid, you won't let it near the dirt. That second kid, you let him eat the dirt.
Yes. And it's true in my own experience, having 2 children myself.
Yeah.
The first one, I remember coming home from the hospital and just driving the truck like an old grandma who was 4'11" and can barely see over the steering wheel,
Yeah.
and just in the slow lane, and thinking to myself, look at all these drivers. What are they doing? They're breaking the land speed barrier. This is outrageous. Where's a police officer when you need them? CHP, get that guy. And now it's much, much different, right? You go back to
The second one, you're just like, let's get home. Daddy needs a martini.
yeah, you just you figure it out. You figure out what is and isn't important, and what has an effect and what doesn't, and what has consequences that you are willing to live with, and which ones you're not, and then you start to relax a little bit.
So no jealousy in the treatment of your subsequent siblings? Like
For me, no.
No.
But they definitely, at least my two brothers, definitely. My two brothers definitely had some bitterness and resentment towards me. Just, they thought I was favored. At least I got the sense that they thought, and they have expressed some of these things verbally just over the years. They thought I was firstborn, and you're kind of favored, and things just kind of go your way, and you're lucky, and this or that, and it really didn't have anything to do with favoritism per se. It was more or less I was making different choices than they were, and I was getting better consequences and better outcomes, and they were. That didn't sit well with them. If I did this and I got a great outcome, and they were unwilling to do this and they got a lesser outcome, then now I'm to blame for their poor choices.
It's funny. I felt the opposite. I felt like my brother was. I felt I was treated unfairly, and when we were kids. Now I don't care, and I could see how it wore down. But when I was a kid, I felt like I was being treated unfairly. That my brother was favored. That he was getting all the breaks. Like I was the kid. The expectations were levied very high. If I got a C, I was grounded. And my brother, who turned out perfectly fine, who has a great job, has his own family, but didn't have to adhere to the expectations, I don't think, at the same level when I was a kid. We were kids, so like I'm getting grounded for C's. He's just getting away with murder.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. Maybe so you didn't feel drowned out, but your brothers maybe they did.
Yes, they more or less felt. This is my perception, and if I had them here, they might share something completely different. But from what I gathered from their own admissions and actions, was that things just go your way. Things are easier for you. You have it pretty good. You're lucky. And it's not like that for us. It's much harder. It's much more difficult. And they were both my brothers. They were closer. They were friends. They were pretty close. They were partners in crime in many, many ways. And there's so many stories. I remember, what happened? We had a babysitter. My father was working late. My mother had a meeting. I think it was with the Boy Scouts. She was really involved. We grew up in the Scouts, and so we were home with a sitter. And my two brothers thought it would be a good idea to tie one of my brothers to a chair to see if he could get out. And we were working on our Boy Scout knots, right? Yeah. We were working on all of that. So I took a step back. Was like, no, this is a terrible idea. You probably should not do that. And the reason, it was my youngest brother who suggested it, because the brother right underneath me was just running amok, like jumping out of windows and
Jumping
just
out of windows.
was uncontrollable. So my younger brother was like, "Hey, let's tie him up," and convinced the babysitter, like, "All right." And so they did. But what what the babysitter and what nobody realized was that my brother had stuffed a knife up his sleeve, and he was planning to get tied up and cut himself out.
Like in an action movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
And while he was trying to get the knife out of his sleeve or wherever he had stashed it, he rocked the chair over and cracked his head on the fireplace face forward while he's tied up. So now he's bleeding everywhere. He needs to go to the hospital. He's got rope all around him and every which way. The babysitter calls my mother.
Where's the babysitter during this?
And I don't even remember. I think it was a guy. I think it was just like a teenage guy that my mom was just like, "Hey, keep him alive while I'm gone," and that was it.
Almost failed.
Almost failed. And so now my mother has to leave her meeting early. She comes home. She's got to take him to the hospital. They go to the emergency room, so that's costly, of course. And the people in the emergency room are looking at her like, "Why does he have rope burns all over his wrists?"
Right.
And his ankles. And the thing was, my brother told the story, and it was just so ridiculous, and it was it just made sense, and it flowed out effortlessly that they couldn't help but believe her. But they looked at her a little sideways when he first came into the emergency room, definitely. But yeah, my two brothers, they're just a bunch of knuckleheads. They got to learn things the hard way. And I know I always kept my stuff in pristine condition. I mean, you know this about me. I like things to be untouched. I mean, this pen, I almost threw this away after last episode.
Surprised you haven't.
I thought about it. But, if I ever scratched something, like I wouldn't even use it. I'd buy a new one. If, I had plastic film still on a whole bunch of stuff. I had, everything was pristine and had its place and was untouched. And my brothers were just like using stuff and breaking stuff and using stuff and breaking stuff. And whose stuff was the most attractive? It was my stuff, because I would save my money and earn up and buy the nicest of everything that I could possibly own. And they like to use my stuff, and my stuff would get broken a lot of the time so yeah, that was kind of one of their ways that they knew that they could get back at me or kind of irk me a little bit.
Break your stuff.
Just touch my stuff, use my stuff. I don't think they necessarily deliberately sought out to just like snap something in half or what have you, but the way they went through their own things, that happened to my stuff quite often.
Yeah. It's so funny. So like my brother and I did not get along when we were younger. And it wasn't so bad, It would be one of those things where it was like, "Hey, he's hitting me. Hey, stop that." I was a pretty good kid, and I would try to keep out of trouble. Got in trouble a few times, but we didn't have these like kind of like big blowout fights while growing up. It wasn't until we became friends, like in late teens and such, that things started to really get out of hand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because then together we were just absolute terrors, and and we would just have just these ragers. So my parents, they go to this big thing up north every year around Father's Day. It's like this big 2-week thing. It's like it's like camping, but it's Frontier West reenacting. And so they go, and when we were old enough, they would leave us home. Because we're not going to go for 2 weeks. Probably had school, and I probably had work or something at that time. And it was when we became close. Then we were just like, well, what are we going to do while Mom and Dad are gone? I mean, my brother's birthday is on Father's Day, which seems just natural that we have a party. And my brother was, he was a preppy kid in high school. He had a lot of the cool kid friends, and a free house on a Saturday when you're 17, 18 is pretty attractive.
Yes, and could be trouble.
Oh my gosh! So we did it for years, and your
parents didn't know?
No, they didn't know until much later in life when we told them. And
Okay, so they're not going to find out now when this
no,
podcast
no.
releases.
They know. They know because my brother is so he's so matter of fact about things like the past. You know, he just like, yeah, that's what happened. You know, whatever.
Mhm.
You know, he's just. But the thing is, you know, and we were, you know, you have a bunch of teenagers in your house, and it's just a free for all. But my dad is an antique collector, and the house is full of little things, little breakable objects, little antiques, and never once did anybody ever break anything. Like
That's
like
amazing.
no, seriously, it's
That's a
kind-
miracle.
It's kind of incredible, but it was because of that we never really got caught.
Did anything ever go missing?
No, they were good. They were good kids.
Okay.
Yeah, there wasn't.
They
you
didn't know the value and what was
Or
around.
I didn't. I still don't know the value in some of that stuff that my dad collects, but it's there, and nothing got broken, nothing got taken. The only thing that we had trouble with was the neighbor behind us, who just was just a get off my lawn kind of cranky old coot, and he never ratted us out. To his credit, he never ratted us out, but he would lecture the shit out of me.
Oh,
The next morning, he would call first thing in the morning. That can you meet me at the back fence? You know.
oh, right.
And
Wow.
yeah, and over the fence, he would throw lectures down at me
Like Wilson from Home Improvement.
yeah, but not fun or advice giving. More like, you kids are wasting your life. I'm not going to tell your father, but this is this kind of stuff. Like, yeah. So and now me and my brother are like super close. We don't hang out every day, but he was my best man. I was his best man. That kind of stuff.
Okay.
But when we were kids, like young kids, couldn't stand each other. I could not wait to move into the spare bedroom in the house because we had bunk beds when we were kids in one room. And I'll never forget when I was probably 12 or 13, and I asked one Christmas, "Hey, can I just move into the office?" And they're like, "Sure." And they could pop the mattress right off the top of the bunk bed, drug it into the other room, and bap, slept on the floor for like a year
Okay.
to get out, to get away from him. Maybe that was the trigger,
Yeah, maybe some time apart did you well.
or maybe we just grew out of it.
Yeah, perhaps.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I would have liked my story to be closer to yours because when my sisters are another story. I mean, I'm so much older than they are. I didn't really connect with them. I love them and they're part of the family.
They're a different generation.
But they're young and we didn't share any interests, we didn't share any activities, we didn't share anything. So I really had to go out of my way to try to connect with them. And so if I didn't, then the relationship didn't really continue and didn't really amount to much. And I did make a great amount of effort in very short occasions with them, and I can get into that later. But with my brothers, we more or less, they didn't necessarily like me as much. At least this is my perception. Growing up, I kind of tolerated them. I was like, oh, okay, these guys, and then it just got worse from there. It just like when we became teenagers, and when we got jobs, and when we got licenses and were driving and things like that. It was just, all right, let's complete separation.
Yeah.
Right. They just did not become people that, and maybe I'm the same for them. Maybe I'm not the person that they would have wanted to engage with and hang out with and spend time with. And I had the same view. And so we went in our own directions.
So that brings up an interesting point. So does being family, and this I hear this question a lot, especially nowadays. You get a lot of things about toxic family members and such, especially on the internet. Does being family immediately mean that you have to, that you're family? You have to do all of the things that are associated with being bound by blood, like you have to be close, you have to get along, you have to always be there for one another, you have to step up when the other's in trouble. Those kinds of things that like you see like in the old mobster movies, that this is family.
Yes.
That kind of stuff. Do we think that is a requirement?
No, I don't think it's ever been a requirement. I think it's nice if it happens. I think if you live in a family that operates in that way, to a certain extent, and there's some exceptions, but I think it's a nice thought. In theory,
Yeah.
it's nice to think about. However, with real life, as people age and they have less and less disposable time, and I know in this day and age we're talking and speaking more about one's mental health and recognizing what we call toxic relationships, even though I don't necessarily like that term toxic because I think it's thrown around too much and it's misused and it's not clearly defined. But those quote unquote toxic relationships many times are attached to the people in your family. And if you don't provide yourself some relief, if you don't provide yourself some separation, or if somebody doesn't know how to clearly define boundaries and limitations and go, okay, I know you're my brother and I'm not doing this for you because in the long run, this is going to harm you, even though in the short term, it's going to help you, or at least you will believe it's going to help you right now. But it's more of this, it's this marathon, it's this long-term thing. If we're unable or unwilling to help our family members, even when they don't like it, then are we truly helping them, or are we just enabling them?
Yeah. So, and me, I've held both stances in my life. My brother-in-law lived with me off and on for 8 years, and I always felt, well, family's family. So he needs a place. I have room. Here we go. Get him on his feet. Get him out into the world. But then time drug on, and I perpetually just told myself, well, family's family. So it kind of is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't. And we had talked about this years ago, and I think maybe you put the idea into my head that I was enabling his behavior, and you were 100% correct. If that indeed was you,
it might have been.
Yeah,
I am sorry.
But even still, I fought against the notion that I could do what was right for him by abandoning him, because family is family. It wasn't until when I was going back to school for the job I have now, yeah, it was right before I went back to school, actually, or maybe I had just started going back. But he had a morning job. I was working as a backup. I was working in the region as a receiving clerk, but I was going around and like giving guys vacation time and doing the receiving job. And so I had to get up. I had to be at wherever I was
early,
5 o'clock in the morning. And he was the same way. He was working for a delivery company, and he was the office manager, and he had to be there before things got popping. And we were starting to really get into it. Like, we were arguing, and I was just, I think maybe I was looking for an excuse, honestly. But one morning I got up to go to work, and I went outside, just kind of groggily exited my home, and my car was not there. And I'm like, oh, dude, don't tell me my car has gotten stolen. I mean, come on. I go back inside, and there where my keys should have been on the nightstand, or on the end table, is a note from my brother-in-law that says, hey, I couldn't get my car to start, so I took yours. Here are my keys in case you want to try and fix my car for me. And you can imagine,
wow,
I damn near lost it. And I do have anger management issues, but I'm not prone to there's just fits of rage. And it was all I could do to go outside and like scream into my elbow, because my wife was sleeping. I had the wherewithal. So I took his keys, went to his car. I'm like, well, I need to get to work. So hope maybe I can look at it and see what the deal is. And he didn't know that sometimes the steering wheel gets locked and you kind of give it a little tiny little eighth turn and it'll unlock the key.
Yeah.
So I drove his car to work. And when I got to work, I texted my wife and I was like, hey, here's what's going on. And I don't care. When he gets home, tell him it's over.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to blow up in the middle of the house.
Sure.
But tell him 30 days or whatever, and he's gone.
This is why I do not invite people to live with me.
And I keep saying I won't invite anybody to live with me again. Yet we know how that goes. This is the last time.
So when my wife and I got married, we set a boundary between us. Hey, we're gonna spend our first 2 years of our marriage and we're gonna focus on us.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna have children for 2 years. We're not going to invite family members to live with us. We're not inviting roommates over. And I don't advise this, going back a little further. So my wife and I, before we were married, this is a bad idea, we got ourselves into one of those vacation club timeshare things. Over a year.
You have to make sure that you reiterate the statement before you were married.
Before we were married, we had contractual obligations that had a 10-year loan on it.
Were you at least affianced, or you were just dating?
No, not yet. I don't think. No, we weren't even.
Just blind in love, and hey, let's get this vacation.
Yes, no, because it was March of 20 or March of 07, I think it was, when we got this thing, because my now wife got a letter in the mail. No, she got a phone call. I think she also got a letter, but she got a phone call from this vacation club that had received her number because we went to the mall. They're like, hey, let's win this car. And I'm reading the fine print, and they're going to send us a whole bunch of stuff we don't want, try to sell us stuff. And we ended with, well, we're not going to be upset with what they send us if we win the car. So, okay. So we do it. They call her. They don't call me. I think I filled one out too, but they call her and they're like, you've won a free cruise. And then she calls me, I've won a free cruise and we need to go to this meeting. I was like, I know exactly what this is.
Of course. Yeah.
We should not do this.
But you did.
But she wanted this cruise.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're dating and things are going well. I was like, okay, I will go to this thing with you and get this cruise. And whatever they try to sell us, the answer is no. And
said the super consumer.
That's it. Yes. So obviously, end of story. We walked out of there with one of their phenomenal packages and this and that. They threw in the cruise and a bunch of other free gifts and things of that nature.
So did you use the vacation share points to go to a romantic spot to propose to her?
It did not.
Oh, it's a good idea though.
Yeah, we took a Carnival cruise to Ensenada, Mexico, 3 day, 2 nights. We had 3 nights in wine country. We did that. They even gave us a week anywhere in the world for a small exchange fee, but we were poor at the time and couldn't afford the exchange fee, so we didn't go. So we had that already, and then we 2008, the next year, the housing market completely collapsed, and everything was a half off sale. Yeah. And so we found ourselves buying a house and we're in escrow. This is, again, before we were married.
Were you affianced at that point?
Yes, we were.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, we were. Yes, that is true. And so we were committed. We were committed before, and maybe just didn't even know it, but we went through those extra steps. And we told ourselves, because our home had more than enough space to house people. Mm. And we're like, people in my family, and I expected this. It was like, hey, my brother's a couple of knuckleheads, and they might be looking for a place to live in the future. And the answer is no. We're at the very least within the first 2 years. And my wife's family. She's got some people in her family that like to learn things the hard way too, and they could have easily been in the same position.
Yeah.
I've had, and it's been tough because I've both of my brothers have been homeless at one point, and my father, when he was alive, he was homeless at one point. My youngest brother did call once, and he asked for a place to stay, and it was a difficult conversation. I could hear his voice, and I knew, because we had announced when my wife and I bought our house at some family gathering with a little bit of humor involved. Hey, we're starting our lives together. We've got a new place. I don't want any of you to become homeless in the next 2 years, because we have already decided that we're not inviting anybody to live with us for 2 years. So sort it out. Take care of your affairs. Like we gave that family announcement. My brother was there for it.
And almost in spite of that, they were determined to become without housing.
So my brother calls. He's the youngest brother, and he's usually happy-go-lucky, really outgoing, and a lot of friends, charismatic. People like him. He made some poor choices, and he's moved on. He's doing well now. So, but at the time, over the phone, I could hear shame in his voice. I could hear the defeat. He already knew the answer before he called, but it was just the last, the absolute last resort, last ditch effort to attempt to kind of pull himself back up. Now, I turned him down. I told him why, and I wished him the best. And he did, over time, turn around. Who's to say what would have happened if I had taken him under my wing and given him a place to stay and maybe even provided him some mentoring? I don't know. But I think it's important, especially for males, to be able to figure it out, solve their problems, pull themselves up, and get themselves back to a place where they can thrive. And it was difficult for him. He did end up finding another place to live. So good for him. And it worked out in the end. And right now he's fine.
And that's great. So yeah. So in both of our situations, I honestly think that by denying him, like the immediate relief, I think you did him a service. My brother-in-law doesn't talk to us anymore, probably because of the nature. I let it go too long, and then it became a sticking point, and I drew the line in the sand and I threw him over it. But he's doing just fine as well, and he did not have that opportunity when he was living with me, because I was coddling him, and he was more than willing to accept what I was offering. He was like, well, I have a computer, I have my video games, I can live out of your freezer. What more is there in life? It wasn't until I forced him to go, fuck around and find out that he ended up doing better. Same thing with the second person that I invited to move in with me, who is not family, but he's family, right? So same deal. And he's doing phenomenally, and his growth trajectory has been continuous since I told him he had to leave. So there's something to be said.
You might be able to get some government resources, because you almost have like a makeshift shelter over there.
Shut up.
I think there's grants out there, perhaps. I mean, I have some connections in that area.
Yeah, calm down. No, absolutely not. I don't like that I've spent so much of my life trying to get back to a place where it's just me, my wife, and my cats. But here we are. So we spent a lot of time talking about siblings. That's family. That's great. Maybe next episode we spend a little time talking about like parent relationships.
Sure.
I know I told the anecdote about getting my father drunk, which I can already hear the phone call I'm going to get from my mother. So good. But please join us next time where we continue and conclude our epic arc on relationships with one more episode on family. And
please like, comment, subscribe, and don't beat me up in the comments too much about kicking or denying my family members housing.
tell me I was right or wrong. I don't care. Now you're out.
I'm out.
Not as good with some ice. A little mellowing.